The glass of water Ethan hands me feels colder than it should, its icy surface biting into my palm. My son's smile is warm, disarming, his brown eyes glinting with what I once mistook for affection. "Drink up, Mom," he says, voice smooth as silk. "It's hot today." I nod, my lips curling into a practiced smile, but my heart is racing. Just yesterday, I uncovered a truth that shattered the fragile trust I'd clung to for years. Ethan, my only child, has taken out a $2 million life insurance policy in my name, with himself as the sole beneficiary. I'm Aurora James, 50 years old, a woman who's built a life from scratch in the quiet suburbs of Seattle. I've poured every ounce of my love into raising Ethan, believing that my sacrifices would one day be repaid with gratitude. But now, as I hold this glass, I see him for what he is, a stranger wearing my son's face, plotting to turn my death into his fortune. This is the story of how I outsmarted him, and how I reclaimed my life from the ashes of betrayal. If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories, they're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. Chapter 1: The Seeds of Doubt, June 4th to 10th, 2024. My home, a 3-story Victorian perched on a quiet street overlooking Puget Sound, has always been my sanctuary. Its polished oak floors and stained glass windows hold the echoes of my life's work as the founder of Aurora Designs, a boutique interior design firm that carved my name into Seattle's elite circles. The house, valued at $1.5 million, is more than brick and mortar. It's the culmination of countless late nights, each blueprint a battle won against doubt and exhaustion. But lately, its walls feel less like a refuge and more like a bullseye painted by the one person I never thought would aim for me. Ethan, my 25-year-old son, is both my pride and my Achilles heel. His sharp jawline, inherited from his father, Michael, frames a smile that could charm anyone. Yet beneath that charisma lurks a recklessness I've spent years trying to tame. As a teenager, he burned through money like it was kindling, designer sneakers, gaming consoles, spur-of-the-moment trips with friends who vanished when the bills came due. I paid off his debts, from credit card overdrafts to a totaled car, convincing myself it was temporary, that he'd outgrow his impulsiveness. I raised him alone after Michael abandoned us when Ethan was 3, leaving me to piece together a family from the wreckage of his infidelity. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night was for Ethan. But now I wonder if I loved him too well, too blindly. On June 3, 2024, the first crack in my trust appeared. I was in my home office, sorting through silk and velvet swatches for a client's penthouse redesign, when Ethan's voice drifted through the wall from the living room. Low, secretive, it carried a weight that made my skin prickle. "The policy's in place," he said, his tone conspiratorial. "Premium tier, $2 million. We just need the right moment." My heart lurched, the swatches slipping from my hands, their colors pooling on the floor like spilled blood. Policy? I hadn't signed anything. My mind raced, grasping for explanations, but a cold dread settled in my chest. I crept out of the office, my footsteps silent, my face a mask of calm. That night, sleep was a stranger. Ethan's words replayed in my mind, each one a shard of glass cutting deeper into the trust I'd built over decades. The next morning, I drove to the Pacific Trust Insurance office downtown, my hands gripping the steering wheel to hide their trembling. The receptionist, a young woman with a smile too polished, typed my name into her computer. "Yes, Ms. James," she said, her voice neutral but her eyes flickering with curiosity. "There's a life insurance policy under your name activated 2 weeks ago. High value $2 million with Ethan James as the beneficiary." My breath caught, my fingers digging into the counter's edge. "Who authorized it?" I asked, my voice barely steady. She hesitated, glancing at the screen. "Your son provided a power of attorney document. The signature was verified through prior records." The words hit like a slap. Years ago, I'd given Ethan power of attorney to settle a car loan debt, a desperate act to save him from creditors. He'd kept it, wielded it like a blade to forge my consent. I left the office clutching the policy copy, my mind a storm of betrayal and rage. As I drove home, the Seattle skyline blurred, not from tears of sorrow, but from a fury so raw it burned. Ethan, the boy I'd rocked to sleep, whose tears I'd wiped, had turned my love into a weapon. In that moment, I knew I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was a woman betrayed, and I would not let him win. Chapter 2. The Facade of Family, June 11th to July 15th, 2024. Returning home from the insurance office, I felt like an actor stepping onto a stage, my heart armored behind a smile. Ethan and Sophia were in the kitchen, their laughter a sharp contrast to the storm raging inside me. Sophia, 24, was a study in calculated allure, golden hair cascading in perfect waves, skin flawless as porcelain, but her smile was a mask, never touching the cold glint in her eyes. They'd married 6 months ago in a wedding I'd funded, pouring thousands into their lavish day despite the unease Sophia's presence stirred in me. Since then, Ethan's visits had dwindled to rare appearances, his calls replaced by terse texts, each one a veiled request for money. "Hey, Mom," Ethan said, sliding a plate of cookies across the counter, his voice warm but laced with something I now recognized as deceit. "You okay? You look tired." I forced a smile, my heart a fortress bolted shut. "Just work, sweetheart. Thanks for the cookies." I left them untouched, their sugary scent now tainted by suspicion. After learning about the $2 million life insurance policy Ethan had forged in my name, I trusted nothing from his hands. Sophia's voice cut through, syrupy and practiced. "Aurora, you really should take it easy. Ethan and I worry about you." Her words dripped with false concern, each syllable a calculated note in her performance. I nodded, my eyes tracing her face, seeing the gold digger beneath the charm. I'd met women like her before, cunning, cloaked in sweetness, their affection a transaction. But I wasn't the naive mother they assumed. My love for Ethan had blinded me for years, but the scales had fallen. I decided to play their game, to wear the mask of the doting mother while I gathered evidence to expose them. Over the next few weeks, I slipped into the role they expected. I cooked Ethan's favorite lasagna, laughed at Sophia's shallow jokes, and paid the bills they left scattered like breadcrumbs, phone plans, car payments, even Sophia's spa visits. Each act of generosity was a thread in the web I was weaving, one they didn't see tightening around them. Ethan began dropping hints about moving back home. "Our apartment's so cramped, Mom," he said one evening, his tone casual but his eyes sharp with intent. "Sophia and I were thinking we could stay here for a bit. This house is so big, perfect for a family." Sophia nodded, her gaze gleaming with greed. "It'd be so nice to be close, Aurora. We could take care of you." I swallowed a bitter laugh. Take care of me? They wanted my $1.5 million Victorian, my savings, my life. But I softened my voice, playing the part. Of course, Ethan. This will always be your home. On July 1st, they moved in, their boxes and designer bags cluttering my pristine sanctuary. Sophia took charge immediately, rearranging my furniture with the audacity of someone claiming ownership. Aurora, can you make coffee? The good kind, not that instant stuff, she'd demand, her eyes glued to her phone. Ethan sprawled on the couch, scrolling through social media, oblivious to the chaos he'd invited into my life. I fought the urge to scream, instead channeling my rage into strategy. I installed microcameras in the living room and kitchen, hidden in vases and bookshelves, their lenses capturing every move. I activated a call recording app on my phone, preserving their every word. One night, as I passed the guest room, I overheard them whispering. "Once the house is ours, we sell it," Sophia said, her voice sharp as a blade. "Split the money, pay off the policy premiums, and we're set." Finn's laugh was cold, hollow. "She's so gullible. Thinks I'm still her little boy." I stood frozen outside their door, my fists clenched, nails biting into my palms until they drew blood. Gullible? The words seared through me, igniting a fire that burned away the last traces of maternal delusion. They thought they could outsmart me, but they were wrong. I was Aurora James, and I would make them pay for underestimating me. Chapter 3. The Slow Poison, July 16th to August 20th, 2024. The game had begun, and I played it with the precision of a chess master, each move cloaked in the guise of maternal devotion. My counterattack started subtly, born from a rage so deep it felt like a living thing coiled in my chest. I reached out to Clara, my old friend and lawyer who'd guided me through the wreckage of my divorce from Michael. Over coffee at a quiet cafe overlooking Lake Washington, I laid bare the betrayal, Ethan's forged insurance policy, his whispered plans for my money. "I need a fake property transfer agreement," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor in my heart. "Something that looks real but isn't legally binding." Clara's eyes narrowed, her lawyer's instincts kicking in. "You're playing a dangerous game, Aurora. Be careful." Her warning hung in the air, but I was past fear. I was a woman scorned, and my son would learn what that meant. She delivered the document a week later, a masterpiece of deception, pages adorned with official seals, legalese dense enough to fool anyone who didn't read the fine print, non-binding for display purposes only. On July 20th, I presented it to Ethan at dinner, watching his eyes spark with greed as he scanned the title. "It'll take a few weeks to finalize," I said, my tone laced with feigned hesitation. "You know how paperwork is." Sophia, sitting beside him, practically vibrated with excitement, her golden hair catching the chandelier's light. "That's fine, Aurora. We're in no rush." Her smile was a predator's, but I mirrored it, my heart a frozen lake. They thought they had me cornered, but I was already 3 moves ahead. My real weapon was subtler, more insidious. I began cooking for them, not the healthy meals I'd once prepared for Ethan as a boy, but rich, indulgent dishes designed to erode their vitality. Creamy fettuccine alfredo, glistening with butter, bacon-wrapped pork loin dripping with fat, salted caramel desserts that left their plates licked clean. Each meal was a calculated assault, loaded with sodium, sugar, and calories to cloud their minds and weigh down their bodies. "Eat up," I'd say, piling their plates high, my voice warm as I watched them gorge. "You two look like you need some comfort food." They never suspected a thing. Ethan's once quick reflexes slowed. He'd fumble his phone, his eyes heavy with fatigue. Sophia's flawless complexion began to dull, faint shadows creeping beneath her eyes. I observed them like a scientist, my smile unwavering, my heart cold as stone. Every bite they took was a step deeper into my trap, their bodies growing sluggish, their minds fogged by indulgence. On August 15th, while tidying the dining room, I found Ethan's laptop open on the table, its screen glowing like a confession. Curiosity, sharp and reckless, pulled me closer. The browser tabs chilled my blood. How to stage an accidental death, untraceable sedatives, maximizing life insurance payouts. My pulse thundered, my hands trembling as I realized the full scope of their plan. They weren't just after my $1.5 million home, they wanted me dead, my life reduced to a payout. I snapped photos of the screen, my fingers shaking with a mix of fear and fury, and emailed them to Clara with a single word: proof. Then, driven by a resolve I barely recognized, I drove to a pharmacy across town, using a vague excuse to purchase a vial of mild sedative. The pharmacist's curious glance didn't faze me. I was no longer the trusting mother who'd bailed Ethan out of every mess. I didn't know how I'd use the sedative yet, but it was my ace, tucked away for the moment they'd force my hand. Each night, as I lay in bed, their whispered plans echoed in my mind, mingling with memories of Ethan's childhood, his laughter, his tears, the boy I'd loved beyond reason. Guilt clawed at me, whispering that I was becoming the monster. But then I'd remember their cold laughter, their plot to erase me, and the guilt hardened into resolve. They thought I was prey, but I was the hunter now, and they'd soon learn the cost of crossing Aurora James. Chapter 4. The Cliff's Edge, September 5, 2024. On September 4, 2024, Ethan's suggestion of a family hiking trip to Cascade Ridge pierced the air like a veiled threat. "It'll be fun, Mom," he said, his grin stretching too wide, a predator's mask slipping into place. A chance to bond. His words dripped with a sincerity I no longer believed, each syllable tightening the knot of dread in my stomach. Sophia nodded, her hand grazing my arm with rehearsed warmth. "We've been so stressed, Aurora. A day in nature will do us all good." Her smile was a polished lie, but I mirrored it, my voice steady despite the pulse hammering in my throat. I'd spent a decade with the Seattle Mountaineers Club, mastering wilderness survival and first aid. My body, sculpted by years of hiking and yoga, was stronger than most women half my 50 years. Cascade Ridge, with its treacherous trails and whispered tales of lost hikers, was no mystery to me. If Ethan and Sophia thought they could outmaneuver me on my own terrain, they were dead wrong. We set out at dawn, Ethan behind the wheel, Sophia humming softly in the front seat, her melody a thin veneer over the tension. Park was desolate, the air sharp with the first hints of autumn. We hiked for hours, climbing a narrow trail that hugged a 200-foot cliff, its jagged edge a silent warning. Ethan called for a rest near a rocky outcrop, the wind howling below. "Here, Mom," he said, handing me a bottle of electrolyte water, his eyes glinting with expectation. "You must be parched." I took the bottle, my fingers brushing its cold surface, and raised it to my lips, letting the liquid trickle down my chin, unseen. I packed my own water, tucked safely in my backpack. "Thanks, sweetheart," I said, my gaze locking onto theirs, searching for cracks in their facade. Their smiles were too eager, too fixed. From my bag, I produced 2 protein bars, each laced with the mild sedative I'd procured weeks earlier. "You two need energy," I said, handing them each one, my voice warm as honey. They tore into the bars, oblivious to the faint chemical tang, their greed blinding them to caution. Minutes later, Sophia's eyelids drooped, her yawn betraying her fading alertness. Ethan slumped against a rock, his words slurring into mumbles. I waited, my breath steady, then collapsed theatrically to the ground, eyes closed, body limp. "She's out," Sophia whispered, her voice bubbling with glee. This was too easy. Ethan's reply was ice cold, stripped of pretense. Let's make it look like she slipped. The insurance will pay out by next month. Their unsteady hands gripped my arms, dragging me toward the cliff's edge, their steps faltering under the sedative's weight. I counted silently, my heart a metronome of resolve. Then, two heavy thuds echoed as they collapsed, the drug claiming them fully. I rose slowly, brushing dirt from my jacket, my voice a low hiss in the wind. You thought you could bury me? You're not even close. I shouldered my backpack and began the descent, leaving them sprawled on the rocky trail, at the mercy of the wilderness they'd chosen as my grave. Fate, however, had other designs. Near the trailhead, a faint cry broke the silence. In the underbrush, an older man lay, his leg twisted grotesquely, his face pale with pain. "Help!" he gasped, his voice barely a whisper. I dialed 911, staying until paramedics arrived, their lights flashing against the dusk. He introduced himself as Victor Langston, 55, CEO of Langston Enterprises, a firm Ethan's fledgling startup had been desperately pitching to for months. "You saved my life," Victor said, his voice weak but earnest, his hand gripping mine. "Anything you need, Miss James, just ask." I smiled, slipping his business card into my pocket. "Just doing the right thing, Mr. Langston." But as I walked away, a new plan flickered in my mind, sharp and unyielding. Ethan and Sophia had underestimated me, but Victor's gratitude was a wild card, one I intended to play. Chapter 5. The Reckoning, September 6 to October 15, 2024. On September 6, 2024, Ethan and Sophia were found on the Cascade Ridge Trail, dehydrated but alive, their bodies slumped like discarded puppets. In the hospital, I played the role of the distraught mother, my eyes glistening with crocodile tears as I hovered by their bedsides. "I don't know what happened," I said, my voice trembling with feigned worry, lifting my leg to reveal a fake ankle brace I'd bought for the charade. I woke up in a clinic with a sprained ankle. Their eyes burned with suspicion, Ethan's narrowing into slits, Sophia's glinting with barely restrained fury. But they had no proof, no way to unravel the trap I'd sprung. I left the room, my heart a quiet storm, knowing the game was far from over. While they recovered, I executed the next phase with surgical precision. I booked them a 10-day trip to the Maldives, a glittering escape to luxury resorts, all charged to Ethan's credit line. They spent with abandon $200,000 on oceanfront villas, gourmet dining, and designer shopping, oblivious to the digital ledger I kept, tracking every cent. Back home, I moved like a ghost through my own house, purging their presence. I hired movers to clear their belongings, donating Ethan's clothes and Sophia's gaudy decor to charity. By October 1st, I'd changed the locks, sealing my Victorian sanctuary against their return. Then I sent Ethan an invoice, $200,000 for the Maldives extravagance, plus $50,000 in prior debts he'd racked up, all tied to his name. His call came as their plane touched down on October 10th. "What the hell, Mom?" he roared, his voice crackling with panic. "What are these bills?" I stood in my kitchen, the Puget Sound glittering through the window, and kept my tone calm, almost serene. "You spent the money, Ethan. Now you pay it back. And don't call me Mom unless you mean it." The words felt like a blade, sharp and final, cutting through the illusion of our bond. Then I dropped the truth that had haunted me for years. "You're not my son. Your real mother was the woman who ruined my marriage. I raised you, gave you everything, and you repaid me with betrayal." My voice was steady, but inside, my heart splintered, memories of Ethan's childhood clashing with the man he'd become. He screamed, His denial's frantic, but I emailed him the paternity test results I'd obtained a decade ago when Michael's infidelity first came to light. "Pay your debts and leave," I said, hanging up, the silence that followed both a wound and a relief. On October 15th, they appeared at my door, pounding and yelling, their voices shrill with desperation. "Open the door, Aurora!" Sophia shrieked. I stepped forward, tossing the fake property transfer agreement at their feet. "Read the fine print," I said, my voice cold as the autumn air. "This house is mine." Sophia's face twisted, her beauty contorting into rage. "You tricked us," she spat, clutching the papers. I smiled, a slow, deliberate curve of my lips. "You were too busy counting my money to notice." The words landed like a slap, and Ethan's shoulders sagged, his eyes hollow with defeat. I shut the door, the lock clicking with finality, and turned away from the wreckage of the family I'd once believed in. Chapter 6. A New Dawn, October 16th to December 31st, 2024. With Ethan and Sophia gone, a weight lifted from my soul, and for the first time in years I tasted freedom. My Victorian home, once a battleground of betrayal, became my canvas. I stripped away the sterile decor I'd maintained for Ethan's approval, replacing it with vibrant tapestries, warm ochre walls, and textures that sang of my spirit. In the backyard, I planted a herb garden, mint, rosemary, lavender, each seedling a promise to nurture myself. I joined a pottery class at the local art center, my hands molding clay into shapes that felt like rebirth. Hiking trails I'd neglected called me back, and with each step through the Cascade foothills, my heart grew lighter, unburdened by the mother I'd been forced to be. On October 23rd, Victor Langston called, his voice a warm anchor in the chaos of my past. "Not just to say thank you," he said, inviting me to dinner. "I'd like to know you, Aurora." His sincerity disarmed me, a contrast to the calculated charm I'd endured from Ethan and Sophia. Our first dinner at a quiet bistro overlooking Puget Sound stretched into hours, his steady presence easing the scars I hadn't realized I carried. Dinners became walks along the waterfront, then mornings cooking in my kitchen, Victor's laughter filling spaces long silenced by betrayal. He never pushed, never demanded, but his quiet kindness was a constant, a lighthouse in my storm. By November, I began to trust the warmth in my chest when he was near. One crisp morning, a package arrived, unmarked but heavy with implication. Inside were internal documents from Langston Enterprises, detailing Ethan's termination from his startup for ethical violations. My breath caught, not from surprise but from the subtle power of Victor's unspoken loyalty. Over coffee that day, his eyes met mine, a quiet smile curving his lips, saying nothing yet everything. I didn't ask, and he didn't explain, but the gesture cemented a bond one hadn't dared hope for. By December, my life was wholly mine. The herb garden flourished, its lavender scent wafting through open windows. My pottery class yielded a set of mugs, imperfect but mine, each one a testament to my rediscovery. Aurora designs thrived, my clients marveling at the newfound passion in my work. I was no longer the mother who gave until she broke. I was Aurora, a woman carving her own path. On December 30th, I sat with Victor on my porch, jazz drifting softly from a vintage record player, the air alive with the fragrance of my garden. His hand brushed mine, his touch gentle but electric. "Aurora," he asked, his voice soft, "do you think you could love again?" I turned to him, my heart unshielded for the first time in decades. Ethan's betrayal had taught me that love could wound, but Victor's presence showed me it could also heal. I saw my reflection in his eyes, not the mother, not the victim, but a woman whole and alive. "Maybe I already am," I said, my voice steady, a smile breaking through like dawn after a long night. In that moment, I knew I'd reclaimed not just my home, but my future, built on my terms, with a man who saw me as I was, not as a means to an end. Epilogue: A Life Reclaimed, January 1st, 2025. As the first dawn of 2025 broke over Puget Sound, I stood on my porch, a mug of chamomile tea warming my hands, the scent of lavender from my garden mingling with the crisp air. My Victorian home, once a cage of betrayal, now glowed with my essence, vibrant tapestries, warm ochre walls, and pottery I'd shaped with my own hands. Ethan and Sophia were gone, their absence a quiet victory. I'd shed the role of the sacrificing mother, emerging as Aurora James, a woman who'd reclaimed her life from the ashes of deceit. Victor Langston, with his steady presence, stood beside me, not as a savior but as a partner in this new chapter. His question from that December night, "Aurora, do you think you could love again?" still lingered my answer. "Maybe I already am," a promise to myself as much as to him. My heart, once scarred by Ethan's betrayal, now beat with hope, open to a future I'd crafted on my terms. 5 lessons I've learned. Love must be earned, not assumed. I poured my heart into Ethan, believing unconditional love would breed gratitude. His betrayal taught me that love, even maternal, requires reciprocity to thrive. Trust your instincts. The moment I overheard Ethan's plan, my gut screamed danger. Listening to that inner voice saved me from his schemes. Strength lies in strategy. Outsmarting Ethan and Sophia required patience and cunning, not just raw emotion. A calculated mind can turn the tables on betrayal. Reclaim your worth. I'd tied my identity to being Ethan's mother, but shedding that role freed me to rediscover Aurora, the woman, the creator, the survivor. Healing is a choice. Victor showed me that love could mend, but only I could choose to open my heart again. Happiness comes from within, not from others' validation. These lessons, carved from pain and triumph, are my gift to you. Betrayal may wound, but it also reveals your resilience. Live for yourself, trust your strength, and never let anyone dim your light. If my story stirred your soul, igniting sparks of courage and renewal, please like, share, and subscribe to join me on this transformative journey. Your support breathes life into these tales of resilience, weaving a tapestry of shared strength. Together, let's ignite a movement, inspiring one another to embrace our truest selves and live with fearless authenticity. Hit that button, spread the word, and let's light up the world with stories of triumph.